The world labeled me lacking, yet heaven confirmed I was already whole and overflowing. Many urged me to struggle more fiercely, but heaven instructed me to use my voice. People counseled withdrawal and a pursuit of achievement defined by human standards. Nevertheless, the Spirit murmured, "Stand firm and speak the word, and I will deliver it to you." I was not sent here to serve only what is visible. I was born to exercise dominion over what cannot be seen, and this applies equally to you. You may believe you are engaging with this message merely to discover how to become a multimillionaire. The reality is this: in the spiritual dimension, you are already a multimillionaire. Declarations do not fabricate a new self. They reveal and uncover what has always existed, word sustained until form appears. Each dollar agreement opening and sacred meeting is already held within the invisible treasury of the word. I did not pursue or strive for these things, nor did merit secure them. I spoke, and by grace through fitting and harmonious means, everything arrived. Thus, when I affirm I am a multimillionaire, I am not stating a wish. I am invoking the holy name. I am that I am, said the Lord to Moses. This process is not esoteric. It functions as a formal proclamation within the tribunal of divine law. It operates as the password that parts the waters and the key that unlocks the treasury. To say I am is to enter your timeless identity, not the identity conferred by society or by a financial ledger, but the one the Spirit knows as true. You are wealthy now, resourced, now sustained, now provided your speech makes contact with heaven. I have stood where you stand, waiting and longing, hesitant to speak good things aloud for fear of disappointment. I formerly assumed faith meant quiet internal belief. I have since learned that genuine faith issues bold decrees. I once held that wealth arises solely from toil. I came to see it flows from rightful authority. I used to wait on God only to realize God awaited my spoken word. When I finally declared calmly and fearlessly, yet with authority, circumstances reconfigured. Resources surfaced, payments came past, obligations concluded, and new gateways emerged. The reason is simple. I pronounced a decree, namely that I am a multimillionaire by divine right, and that provision is present now. Let the frail declare I am strong. Let those in poverty affirm I am rich. The reason is that your mouth plants the seeds of dominion. The tongue does not merely advise, it renders judgments. It is the gavel echoing in the court of heaven, compelling substance to comply. Your word functions like a rod of power. When extended over lack dissolves. When directed at debt is dismissed. When aimed at disorder, chaos reforms into divine order. I therefore assert with zeal, the wealth you seek is already poised, awaiting your voice, unmoving until commanded. Nothing arrives until you identify yourself within it. You are not sent merely to conquer events, but to issue decrees. The tongue is your seat of rule, the throne from which you exercise dominion. You shall decree a thing, and it shall be established unto you. This is not merely a citation. It constitutes legal standing in God's court. Consequently, declare with me without delay or conjecture, not for a distant someday, but for this present moment. I am a multi-millionaire by divine law. The substance is mine now. Wealth answers my voice. I ratify it by law, and so it stands. If you are prepared to live this kingdom, reality remain with me. The world will observe your rise precisely because you choose to speak anchored not in emotion, but in authority. Not through pleading, but through identity. Not in faint hope, but within lawful certainty. Poverty is less a condition than a confession, a repeated incantation whose author eventually forgets being its own magician, ensnared by the illusion reinforced with each fearful whisper, each careless grievance, each "I can't pay," and every unexamined agreement with scarcity, limitation, and postponement, never noticing that such speech does not merely report reality, it drafts the blueprint that constructs it. Layer upon unseen layer, a cramped cell of smallness is constructed, the very enclosure where multitudes reside while they accuse the economy, destiny, news cycles, neighbors, or account balances. Yet the true prison is not scarcity of cash, but the misdirection of the tongue. The world is not compelled by need, it is marshaled by speech. You are never designed to be tethered to numbers on a display or to the rattle of coins in a container. You are fashioned after the image and likeness of the Creator, whose inaugural act was not motion negotiation or frenzy, but proclamation, "Let there be light." And light appeared. That blueprint of divinity remains whole within you, dear one. You hold the same instrument, the mouth, the same animating breath, and the same authority to call into shape what has not yet become visible. Still, countless people persist in voicing not their aspirations, but their anxieties, not their hopes, but their terrors. By speaking this way, they reverse heaven's creative current, converting the word, your scepter and seat of authority, into a mechanism of postponement, irrigating the weeds of uncertainty, and then wondering, why will the harvest of abundance not appear? Hear me in truth, poverty is not fate, ordeal, or cross, not examination or punishment from God. It is an illusory proclamation, a discordant frequency, a cloak of unworthiness meant to be removed through the potency of the word. For the kingdom of God does not reduce to meals and beverages, nor to paychecks, calendars, and immaculate resumes, but to righteousness, peace, and joy, and additionally to abundant substance that appears only to the voice bold enough to assert it. Society will attempt to market poverty to you as if it were virtue, modesty, and practical wisdom. I have not come to stroke your ego. I have come to liberate you, to annul that agreement, and to remind you that your birthright is wealth. Your core nature is abundance, and your speech is the golden key. If you continue to speak as a servant, you cannot stride as a sovereign. If you keep predicting postponement, you will not step into heaven's timing. If you persist in confessing "I can't," I don't know how I'm trying, illusion has commandeered your mouth. The moment has arrived this very instant to reclaim the sanctuary of your tongue and dedicate it anew to truth. And the truth is this: you are neither broken, nor confined, nor stalled. You are neither minor, nor overlooked, nor behind. You are not lacking merit, nor are you cursed, unworthy, victimized, or just enduring. You are the flowing stream of divine substance in motion. You are wealth's very voice wrapped in humanity. You are the steward of God's treasury and the herald of the miraculous. You are a sovereign who has simply left the crown tucked away. Now, precisely now, is the time to set it back upon your head, rise into your stature part, your lips, and pronounce what heaven yearns to hear. I repeat, speak not from emotion, but from dominion. Poverty has no independent existence. It endures only up to your final sentence of agreement. If your language has been scarcity, let this minute signal reversal. Decree I sever every covenant with the mirage of poverty. I nullify every utterance of scarcity that I have voiced or that has been voiced against me. I announce I am supplied, I am rich, I am provided for. I am a multimillionaire by divine law, and the treasure opens now. Let the frail declare I am strong. Let the wounded confess I am prosperous. Let the bound proclaim I am free. And if you are bold enough to state this not as experiment, but as verdict, the law itself will stand to enact your decree. The word does not return void, though it can be withheld unsaid. If your lips have been closed, lift your voice now, and still the deception forever. This did not commence with an investor, a guide, a strategic plan, or a frantic concept, nor with inheritance models, polished campaigns, or a streak of fortune. Every authentic prosperity originates with a word not born of fear or jittery energy, not crafted from mere calculation or shy optimism, but spoken in the cadence of spiritual certainty attuned to heaven's wavelength, so harmonized with divine substance that creation itself yields, just as in the beginning when God declared, "Let there be." Nothing that exists emerged apart from the word. If your prosperity is to materialize, it must be articulated into structure. Well before a dollar appeared, before entrances swung wide or pathways streamed, I was moving in millions in the spirit because I spoke daily not as petition, but as established reality, not as fantasy, but as statute. I am a multimillionaire by divine right, not to impress heaven or coax a reluctant force, but to inhabit the resonance of what already is. I assume my place at the table set before time, aligning my identity not with misleading appearances, but with the ageless essence called truth. When I claim my first million emerge from my mouth, I speak with literalness. Nothing reached my hands that had not previously been loosed by my tongue. Each morning started not with caffeine grievances, financial dashboards, task lists, or metrics, but with a sacred sovereign decree, a proclamation crafted not by emotion or anxiety, nor by societal demands, but by the unchanging statutes of divine abundance which state plainly, "Man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds from the mouth of God." Once I perceived that God and I are one, and that my mouth serves as his instrument, I ceased describing what exists and began commanding what must become. I made declarations when fatigue pressed me, when doubt hissed, when every appearance contradicted, when invoices landed, when nothing seemed to shift, when mockery rose. Some called me foolish, yet I continued armed with holy resolve, serene courage, and zero concession. I am a multimillionaire by divine law. My supply is immediate. My channels are open. My wealth flows now. Even when the surface showed no change, an inner alignment started to occur. My emotions stopped ruling my speech. My sensations no longer authored my voice. I assumed the role of lawgiver over my experience, not a casualty of time, not a servant to appearances, not a petitioner seeking approval to prosper. Permit me to unveil a claim that shatters the prevailing narrative. Your first million already exists in the unseen realm. It merely waits for your voice to unseal the vault, for your tongue to rotate the key, and for your decree to ratify the legality. Circumstances do not bend to toil, delay, or fatigue. They yield to law. Law becomes visible through utterance. Unspoken, it rests as latent potential. Spoken, it functions as authoritative command. Heavenly resources are unmoved by clamor, yet they answer to ordered decree. Therefore, I inquire, what occupies your speech? Do you rehearse what already is, or declare what must be? Do you echo limitation or affirm provision? Do you describe postponement or proclaim appointed timing? Are you reporting the stage or scripting it? Each sentence you release is a seed indifferent to whether it bears prosperity or fear. It simply reproduces after its kind. Articulate with prudence, with a consciousness of abundance, with cadence, and in alignment with law. Address reality as one who speaks before a throne, for the throne indeed listens. Once issued, your word does not return barren. It comes back bearing order, substance, and divinely quickened momentum. Therefore, announce with full breath and rightful authority. My first million is in my mouth. I speak it into law. I speak it into form. I speak it into motion, and I speak until it manifests. I am the legislator of abundance. I am the spokesperson of divine riches. I am a multimillionaire by the creative power of the word, and the word acts now. After such declarations, you cease pursuing money, you govern it. You stop waiting for openings, you authorize them. You no longer provide commentary on life, you author it. Now let us proceed. Another law summons us forward. We turn to the substratum beneath all substance, the unseen architecture supporting every edifice of abundance, the root that nourishes the harvest, the statute that interprets the miracle. Here we uncover why the tongue is the most potent tool of creation and the most perilous when yielded to fearful habit and descriptive chatter. Unless you grasp that your speech is more than language, that it is legislation, more than sound, that it is spiritual decree, more than a statement, that it is divine command, you will keep talking as though your words were delicate viewpoints rather than royal edicts. Yet such edicts carve trajectories in the unseen, resonate through the ethers of substance, and summon into form the wealth of heavenly provision. Hear me plainly, with heaven invoked as witness, the word is not mere symbol. It is framework. It is not a picture of action. It is the engine that actuates manifestation. The prevailing culture has conditioned you to wait for supply before speaking like an heir. Heaven mandates the reverse: speak as one who already possesses, and supply will appear. The visible realm conforms to articulated decree. When spoken in concert with spirit, the word does not plead, it directs. It does not narrate disorder, it inaugurates order. It does not rehearse the issue, it overlays it with divine architecture. Hence, beloved, Isaiah 55:11 stands not as mere verse, but as sacred physics, spiritual law in operation. So shall my word be that goes forth from my mouth. It shall not return to me void, but it shall accomplish what I please, and it shall prosper in the thing for which I sent it. And when fear attempts to pull you back into the older regime of alarm, recall this: you have already spoken by law, and law refuses to bow to fear. Echo continually, I cancel nothing by fear. I water every word with faith. I live by law, not by feeling, and all that I have proclaimed in truth comes to meet me under grace and in perfect ways. And so it is. A sacred threshold arrives when a person ceases to speak from quivering emotion and begins to speak from the seat of law, no longer waiting for ideal feelings to declare what is perfect in spirit, nor requiring outward approval to employ the voice with authority. Law responds not to emotion, but to clear directive. Words of power rise not from moods, but from settled conviction. God pronounced, "Let there be light," not due to a sensation of light or the appearance of illumination, but because his essence is light. He spoke out of his nature, not out of vacancy. And if you are made in God's image and likeness, and indeed you are summoned to declare not what you feel, but what you know to be eternally true. Do so even when the senses mislead, when evidence contradicts, when the phone is mute, the inbox barren, The headlines shriek fear and companions caution. Be realistic. Precisely at such moments, speak by law rather than by feeling. Emotion resembles weather. Law is the sky's foundation. Emotion is a passing wave. Law is the ocean floor. Emotion is drifting cloud. Law is the constant pull of gravity. Should you attempt to construct wealth provision and spiritual identity on the unstable scaffold of emotion, every shifting wind of circumstance, postponements, rejections, sluggishness, dissent will topple you. Yet, if you anchor yourself in law, in the immovable word, you will decree and it will stand established. Your mood at the moment of declaration holds little weight because law does not demand a feeling, it asks only for your voice. Whoever speaks from law presides over the unseen. Therefore, speak as a commander rather than a foot soldier, as a designer rather than a mere builder, as an heir rather than a castaway. Announce my supply is constant, for my source is eternal even when the bill arrives. Avow my wealth increases daily, for I am one with divine substance, even when my wallet seems empty. And continue money flows to me in abundance swiftly and steadily, even when the world provokes fear. Your voice is not tasked with echoing what already is, it is charged with decreeing what must be. Law is exacting. It does not inquire, "How are you feeling?" but "What have you declared?" When your speech aligns with divine truth, the fabric of heaven and earth adjusts, not due to emotional surges, but because you occupied your seat of dominion. Let me be direct. My most potent declarations did not spring from heightened emotion, but from speaking in defiance of it when fear swelled, and I selected faith. When emptiness loomed, and I chose fullness. When delays appeared, and I affirmed divine timing. When forgetfulness threatened, and I enthroned remembrance. Such statements prevailed precisely because they rested on law rather than on fluctuating feeling. This marks the transition from emotion-governed speech to faith-founded utterance. Your tongue is not a thermometer for conditions, it is the regulator of climate. You are not appointed to recite reality's status, but to decide it. Not to chronicle what exists, but to command what must emerge. A ministry centered on the spoken word, a priesthood exercised through your own voice, and the blueprinting of divine wealth. This is your office. When tempests rise, do not merely comment on rainfall. Issue command to the waters, "Peace, be still." When the fig tree yields nothing, resist grieving over scarcity. Declare, "There shall never again be lack in my life." When the banquet seems absent and the table looks barren, refuse sorrow. Pronounce, "You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies." And when resolve fades, the body grows weary, and the heart trembles, address the frailty with authoritative speech, "I am strong." Law attends to your utterance, not because you shout loudly, but because your speech carries legal validity. You speak from the tribunal of truth, rather than from the volatility of flesh. Receive this as a binding covenant. I will not speak from fluctuating emotion, but from the permanence of law. I will not delay until I feel differently. I will command. I will not narrate what seems to appear. I will decree what must unfold. My tongue refuses subservience to shadows. My pronouncement stands established, and heaven itself provides confirmation. Moreover, if God affirmed this concerning his own word, and you were fashioned in his likeness, then your speech, when aligned with the indwelling Christ, bears a corresponding and reliable efficacy. Recognize this distinction. The utterance that comes back void is not the word grounded in law, but the speech birthed from fear, grievance, cynicism, and reflexive reaction. Such hollow phrases resemble arrows loosed into mist they do not clarify. They thicken confusion and reinforce the mirage of scarcity. By contrast, the authentic word returns laden with results, for it is issued as a rightful decree spoken from the sovereign seat of awareness, not from despondency, but from authority, not from mood, but from dominion. This caliber of utterance bears a concealed imperative to reality's fabric: align, open, submit, generate, and manifest. When I reference the spiritual physics governing prosperity, I do not traffic in mere metaphor. I am articulating an animate functional law. I am unveiling a divine mechanism widely overlooked, especially by those who assume wealth arises exclusively from effort, calculation, legacy, or toil. Here the governing order: voice precedes vision, word precedes possession, decree precedes deposit, and sentence precedes substance. If you stop handling your speech as mere wishfulness and start wielding it as a judicial hammer, if you extract every excuse from your language and begin to pronounce verdicts, if you replace doubt and victimhood with steady, calibrated, and unwavering affirmations of truth, the sort heaven never denies nor defers, then your eyes will behold the very outcomes I have witnessed. You will observe the spiritual realm unfurl as though a sealed scroll were opened before you. You will encounter orchestrated connections that no human strategy could have anticipated. Funds will arrive beyond linear explanation. Agreements will settle into your grasp without strain, and opportunities will speak your name in rooms you have never entered. For in declaring what the world deems impossible, you elevate heaven's statutes above the constraints of material law. Therefore, I declare your mouth must never be treated as incidental. It is an instrument of royalty. Your voice is far from benign. It crafts legislation. Your statements are never neutral. They carry spiritual commission. Your words are not simple vibrations. They function as architecture, as schematics, as vital energy, and as binding law. Once you internalize this, you abandon the tone of a servant commenting on market conditions and adopt the posture of a sovereign directing substance. You stop asking, "Can I afford it?" and instead affirm, "Every channel is open, every supply is free, every need covered, every value already sent forth in spirit and manifesting now." Lift your voice at this very moment, eschewing hesitation, dismissing skepticism, renouncing the uncertain cadence, and speak with lucidity and command, not as imitation, but as mandate. My word is law. My word is wealth. My word opens the treasury. It is my inheritance, my authority, my generator of prosperity. I speak what is true in spirit, and thus it becomes real in matter. I decree abundance with my voice. My wealth is born, grows, and multiplies to the sound of my decree. My declaration comes back overflowing, and it will keep returning because heaven's treasury does not answer mere longing. It answers the commanding voice. Something unmistakable occurs within the spirit of the person who finally ceases to narrate appearances and instead affirms reality. Not the someday dream lost in the fog of toil and chance, but what already exists in the unseen, in God's speech, in the everlasting now. This realization dissolves postponement, waiting, and strain. It is a consecrated yielding to the cadence of divine flow, where a word uttered with authority becomes a living span, joining the invisible domain to the sphere of tangible wealth. I testify from experience there was a calm yet daring season when I owned very little, but I carried one sentence and I resolve to pronounce it not occasionally or merely when inspired, but every day for 90 consecutive days, as though breath itself relied upon it. I did not declare it with noise or theatrics. I spoke with steady cadence, inner quiet, and in alignment with law, God is my unfailing supply. Large sums of money come to me quickly under grace in perfect ways. The speech you release contours the substance you encounter. Affirm it, hold it, reiterate it, and let it usher you across the threshold. Therefore, let us commence the building of holy transformation. No cathedral appears by accident, and divine wealth is not seized by human willpower alone. Heavenly provision does not lean on the caprice of wanting or the fluctuations of circumstances. It rests on the clarity and precision of spiritual identity. If you label yourself, "I'm trying nearly there," or "it's not enough," what harvest can you reasonably expect? Rather than speaking from the Holy of Holies, where the I Am abides untouched by appearances, you linger outside the treasury's gates, the keys resting unused upon your lips. Hear this: the primary sacred discipline of anyone who brings wealth into visibility is steady, rhythmic identification with what is already true in spirit, though not yet formed. This is not make-believe performance or wishful imagining. It is the operation of divine law. To declare "I am rich" is not the exhibition of a ledger or balance sheet. It is to bring your identity into alignment with what heaven has already announced and what divine substance has affirmed from the origin. When God disclosed himself to Moses in the burning bush and said, "I am that I am," he did not present a lyrical puzzle. He unveiled the essential name of reality, the principle from which all creation proceeds. Thus, when you speak, "I am," you do more than assert, you initiate a pattern. You connect awareness to the engine of form. You announce to both visible and invisible realms that your voice proceeds not from the senses, but from the source. And when the source is divine, manifestation must follow. A river can convey only what its spring provides. God's fountain yields nothing but abundance, completeness, perfection, opulence, and divine order. Therefore, cast off constricting labels, cancel fictitious titles, dissolve agreements with identities of striving, postponement, or deficiency, and day after day, with a vibrant, rejoicing voice, proclaim, "I am divine wealth. I am the visible expression of invisible supply. I am one with heaven's treasury. I am the point of circulation for unlimited riches." Do not state it once like someone checking in at a roll call. Repeat it continually until resistance melts, until the stale echoes of scarcity and fear are muted, until saying "I am rich" arises more naturally than "I'm trying," until your inner discourse becomes a sweeping, powerful river of truth where doubt cannot take hold. Make this your new liturgy. At waking before screens, balances, or agendas, speak your identity into the ether and let it reverberate through the day's framework. The voice that begins first summons. The declaration made early determines the climate. When the day opens with "I am," it cannot close in lack. This is no pep talk technique. It is the practice of metaphysical mastery. Divine wealth appears not by frantic acquisition, but by embodying what already is. Do not postpone affirmation until signs arrive. Do not plead for confirmations. Do not tiptoe through appearances as though they outweighed spirit. Take your seat in knowing and state who you are, not what you dread, because this is law. And law does not negotiate, it governs. Establish this as your continual confession, day by day, hour by hour, unceasing, not with strain, but with regal composure. I am rich because God is my source. I am prosperous because my identity is joined to supply. I am abundance in embodied form. I am the expression of divine increase. When spoken with timing, lucidity, and fidelity, reality mirrors it not because the world shifted first, but because you did. You are not merely traveling toward wealth. You are wealth in active expression. Speak, move, and live in alignment with that. For I am is not a mere yearning. It is a spoken word. And that word operates as law. No day is neutral ground. Each morning stands on the threshold of becoming. Every dawn waits for instructions. Every hour attends to a voice. If you do not speak with authority, the world will speak on your behalf, declaring chaos, fear, repetition, and limitation, all disguised as logic and realism. Yet I insist you are not summoned to wake beneath the weight of data, nor to take counsel from mood to determine reality. You are not designed to be a thermometer. You are appointed as a regulator of climate. Until you learn to decree before sunrise, you will march to the cadence of appearances, though you are meant to set the tempo with the drum of divine decree. The Most High does not wait on earthly signals before speaking. At the beginning, God said, "Let there be light," and only after that did form obey. It is the same for you. Decree first, dawn later. Speak first, and wealth takes form after. If you wake silent, rise anxious, scroll, and sigh, tally, and rehash yesterday's lack, the day will be shaped without the agency of your spirit. Yet if upon waking you proclaim, "Before my feet touch the ground, before my hands seek tasks, before the mind repeats the old record of delay and doubt, this is a day of divine provision. I walk in increase. Supply meets me at every corner. God goes ahead and prepares channels I have not yet seen. Then you stop merely enduring the day and start ruling it. Use the word first before coffee, before emails, traffic, invoices, clients, and competing voices. The opening word of your morning is the seed from which all later blossoms emerge. It is no triviality, no mere ritual or routine. It is architecture, a blueprint, and legislation issued in heaven's court. Heaven constructs nothing that you have not spoken. Angels do not advance where no decree has been issued. The treasury does not pour forth if the vault of your mouth remains closed to faith, steadiness, and vital expectation. This marks the difference between the spiritually rich and the soul weary. The former decree from the throne before beholding the battle. The latter scrutinize the report of conflict before they dare to speak. The reality is this: once your spoken word has secured victory, nothing in the arena can overrule it. Stand up and rule not through toil, but through decree, not by perspiration, but by proclamation. Let your morning open with a ruling. Let your first inhalation carry prophecy. Let your first utterance bear authority. The word that takes on flesh first appears as a voiced word. You were not born to be a responder to circumstance, but a shaper of it. All creation commences with a command, not a grievance, with divine instruction, not fluctuating emotion. Compose your dawn statement now, your inaugural decree, the mold of your wealth impressed upon time before time resists. Speak it plainly and resolutely, not just once, but until the walls vibrate, until the air transforms, until heaven recognizes the voice of a royal child, remembering that decreeing is not vanity, it is alignment. And what shall be your words? Reiterate continually. The day opens with favor. I receive divine instruction. Every encounter is scheduled from above. Every resource that belongs to me reaches me now. My words summon the invisible. My voice opens portals. I discover increase and overflow before evening falls. Use your voice like a believer and a lawgiver, because what you say operates as law. Tomorrow is more than beverages, tasks, and agendas. It is time's womb. The first voice to speak becomes the ruler. If fear frames your speech, fear ascends the throne. If doubt composes your words, delay takes command. But should you speak with the authority and certainty of the I am provision, travels with you, gates swing open, and each step resounds with the decree that birthed it. Issue command prior to action, speak before you stride, decree before you calculate, then the day will shift from burden into servant. Use this manner of speech and reality will align. There comes a decisive hour for every soul to choose faith over sight. It is the season when winds howl, appearances protest, invoices accumulate, phones lie quiet, doors appear barred, and logic murmurs turn back. Feeling urges capitulation, the world counsels. Be sensible, and even your own thoughts teeter. And when everything seems not to be working at present, multitudes who once declared with courage withdraw, quiver, and unravel their own decrees under the poison of hesitation and the treachery of doubt. Fear dons the costume of safety, speaks with measured prudence, and masquerades as realism. Be not misled, fear is neither guide nor wisdom nor divine counsel. It is a spell of reversal, a silent thief, a counterfeit prophet sent to sabotage supply. If you fail to drive it out as an intruder, it will erode every planted word, unseat each firm decree, and clog channels opened by faith, exchanging substance for shadow. Fear is an emptiness that consumes. Wealth will not remain where it is unwelcome. Hear this with holy urgency. The chief opponent of your decree is not outside opinion markets or history. It is what you nurture after you speak. Each doubt-indulged post-decree turns into a fissure in the wall, a seep in the conduit, a fault line in what ought to be unbreakable. Thus, by the authority of truth and eternity and in agreement with divine law, I charge you retract nothing because of fear. Do not permit midnight anxieties to unravel the prophecy spoken at dawn. Do not let the image of an invoice nullify the force of your blessing. Refuse to let postponement persuade you that heaven has abandoned you. Delay is not refusal. Silence is not vacancy. What seems like nothingness is often the womb in which all is shaped. Law does not slumber. The word does not falter. Your provision marches to a divine timetable, whether or not your eyes detect it. Fear is not up for negotiation. It must be driven out. Devourers are not to be reasoned with. They are to be removed. Keep speaking until opposing forces quiver before your faith. And what shall be your declaration? Speak now, not as routine, but as a thunderous cry I cast upon the Christ in me, the weight of fear, and I go free. I fear no lack, for I walk with the God of more than enough. I fear no delays, for divine timing is exact and never fails. I fear no appearances, for I know the law acts beneath the veil of the visible. Establish this as your holy procedure. Whenever fear utters a word, answer it. Do not permit it the final say. Should it whisper, what if it does not come, respond. It has already arrived in spirit, and form will follow. If fear hisses, you are late, reply. I am in exact divine alignment. My provision goes before me. If it claims there isn't enough, announce. My source is limitless. I live in abundance. Fear is no house guest, it is a trespasser. Divine law will carry out your eviction writ, but only after you issue it. Therefore, speak boldly without alibis, whether emotions agree or not, whether the wind howls or the structure shakes, for law answers truth, not tremors. Establish a vow, a practice, a holy discipline. You will retract nothing because of fear. You will refuse to question what you have already decreed. You will not mimic hollow customs. You will not give fear lodging within your inner sanctuary. Your mouth is an altar, your speech a flame, and your faith, the fragrance that attracts wealth like honey, attracts bees. You have not been placed here to fear, but to form, not to vacillate, but to rule, not to echo scarcity, but to proclaim abundance. And whenever fear attempts to haul you back into the old panic system, recall this: you have already spoken by law, and law yields to no fear. Keep affirming, I cancel nothing out of fear. I water every word with faith. I live by law, not by feeling. And everything I have proclaimed in truth comes to meet me under grace and in perfect ways. And so it is. A consecrated turning arrives when a person ceases speaking from quivering emotion and begins declaring from the throne of law, no longer waiting for ideal moods to voice what is perfect in spirit, nor seeking the permission of appearances to speak with power. Law responds to directives, not moods. Words endowed with power arise from conviction rather than sensation. God said, "Let there be light," not because he sensed light or saw illumination, but because his very being is light. He spoke out of essence, not out of void. And since you are made in the divine image, and indeed you too are summoned to speak not what you feel, but what you know to be eternally true. Do so even when senses mislead, reports deceive, the phone is mute, the inbox barren headlines, trumpet fear, and companions advise, be realistic. Precisely in such hours, let your voice proceed from law rather than from feeling. Emotion is passing weather. Law is the sky's foundation. Emotion is a cresting wave. Law is the ocean floor. Emotion drifts like cloud. Law holds like gravity. If you attempt to construct wealth, provision, and spiritual identity upon the rickety scaffolding of emotion, every faint breeze of circumstance, delays, denials, doldrums, dissent will sweep you away. But anchored in law, in the unshakable word, you will decree, and it will come to pass. Your momentary feeling matters little at the point of speech, because law requests not your mood, but your voice. The one who speaks by law presides over the unseen. Therefore speak as a commander, not a conscript, as a designer, not a drudge, as an heir, not an orphaned soul. Proclaim, my supply is constant, for my source is eternal, even when the bill arrives. Avow, my wealth increases each day, because I am one with divine substance, even when the wallet seems empty. And add, money flows to me in abundance with speed and constancy, even when the world incites fear. Your speech is not tasked with echoing the present. It is charged with declaring the future. Law is precise. It does not inquire about your mood, but asks, what have you spoken today? When your words harmonize with divine truth, the heavens and the earth reconfigure, not because emotions surged, but because you occupied dominion. Hear me clearly, my most potent declarations did not arise from heightened feeling, but from speaking in defiance of it when fear swelled and I selected faith, when emptiness loomed and I chose overflow, when delay appeared and I chose divine timing, when forgetfulness crept in and I chose the throne of remembrance. Such utterances prevailed because their foundation was law rather than emotion. This marks the passage from speech governed by feeling to speech anchored in faith. Your tongue is not a gauge of climate, it is the instrument that sets it. You were not assigned to recount reality's condition. but to decree its direction, not to describe what is, but to command what shall be. A ministry anchored in the spoken word, a priesthood carried by your own voice, and the blueprinting of divine wealth that is your office. When tempests rise, refuse to narrate rainfall. Command the waters instead, peace be still. When the fig tree offers nothing, do not mourn scarcity. Declare never again will there be lack in my life. When the table appears bare, do not grieve absence. Pronounce you prepare a table before me in the presence of my adversaries. And when bravery wanes, the body feels heavy and the heart droops, address your weakness with authority. I am strong. Law attends to your voice not because of loudness, but because of legal standing. You speak from the tribunal of truth rather than from the frailty of flesh. Receive this as a binding pact. I will not speak from fluctuating feeling, but from the permanence of law. I will not delay until I feel. I will command. I will not describe appearances. I will issue decrees concerning what must come. My tongue will not bend to shadows. My pronouncement stands fixed, and heaven ratifies it. Consider a witness a woman whom the world deemed ordinary, yet whom the Spirit regarded as remarkable, confronted a deadline that seemed impossible. Her rent fell due in 10 days. No income was expected, no client had committed, and no human aid was visible by any familiar means. Everything in the material realm screamed, panic worry, begged despair. Yet she had absorbed these teachings and studied the law. Whenever she felt the lure to speak, fear confess defeat, or recite lack to friends and circumstances, she lifted her gaze to heaven and aligned her voice with law, declaring steadily and calmly, not once, but each morning and each night, this rent belongs to God, not to me. Divine substance fulfills every obligation in perfect form. Nothing can separate me from my supply. She remained unwavering. Days slipped by. On the 9th day, nothing had arrived. The phone stayed silent, the inbox bare, and no check existed. Yet her mouth maintained the decree, and her spirit held to certainty. Outwardly, the landscape was barren. Inwardly, faith flowered. Here lies the mystery. It is not what happens to you, but what proceeds through you. Not the bank's report, but the report of your word. Not the brute facts, but the decree you establish. On the 10th day, too late according to those ruled by appearances, an unrequested check arrived from a long-ignored source paying the rent to the final cent free of delay, debt, or justification. It was not the fruit of extra toil, heightened worry, or pleading. It was the harvest of a spoken decree she chose to govern by law rather than by human logic. Some would label it chance luck or timing. I affirm it was the word fulfilling itself, the law bowing to rightful authority, substance responding to the voice of its lawful steward. For a word issued in alignment without inner contradiction and with joy and conviction does not return empty. The real barrier was never the rent, the figure due, or the calendar date. The adversary was not scarcity itself, but its illusion, the fearful voice seeking entry to unsettled dominion. She chose the rare path, speaking solely what she wished to multiply. She handled the issue with praise rather than panic. She affirmed the bill belonged to God and thus fell under His responsibility. Heaven invariably honors what is heaven's. When the Lord stands as your source, no employer, person, or agreement can throttle the stream. Provision is not merely a paycheck. It is the presence of source. It is not driven by emotion or exertion, but by rightful authority. I put the question to you. Will you follow this path? Will you stop discussing the bill and start addressing the bill? Will you trade, "I don't know how," for the affirmation, "My words are the gate. This need is already met"? Will you cease treating money as master and regard it instead as a servant that obeys your decree, not your anxiety? Will you claim your divine entitlement? Do not postpone. Do not wait for better conditions, softer numbers, or a quieter heart. Do it now, in the midst of contradiction and the chorus urging be realistic. Face your financial need and declare calmly yet fervently as she did, "This rent belongs to God and it is already paid." Law plays no favorites, it honors principles. What worked for her will work for you, not by luck or merit, but because it was spoken in accordance with law. Heaven's treasury is not accessed by pleading, but by bold decree, not by tears, but by command, not by feeling wealthy, but by affirming, "I am rich." When your purse looks bare, when evidence is scarce, when your heart quivers, speak nevertheless. Continue daily, even hourly, until the mountain shifts, the check appears, the rent is paid, and overflow starts. Then you will perceive the issue was never money, it was always the mouth. So tell me, what is the rent in your current life? What words will you address to it? Which appearance of lack stands before you? What decree will you lift like a royal scepter in the spirit? Will your speech sound like a financial victim's or like an heir to heaven's treasury? Will your voice arise from fear or from the throne? An unseen line lies drawn in the sand, unnoticeable to sight, yet potent in effect, dividing those who live by appearances from those who live by dominion. You do not cross this boundary through grind over work or haste, but by the tongue, by a voice that defies fear and disregards sensory reports, refusing the culture of complaint and the vocabulary of scarcity. Multitudes linger at the edge, quaking before the invoice, describing it, fearing it, resenting it, rehearsing it to anyone who will listen, as though the bill's presence proved defeat. They fail to see that by discussing the bill rather than addressing it, they yield to it, certify its dominion, ceded authority, and trade heaven's throne of abundance for the cramped cell of reaction. Hear me stop speaking about the bill, speak directly to the bill. It is neither mistress nor judge, neither metric of your value nor ceiling on your provision. It is merely a servant awaiting instruction, a sheet of paper, awaiting prophecy, a temporary assignment, awaiting an eternal decree. Once you grasp that every financial request is an invitation to command, you will never fear an invoice again. You will cease dreading envelopes and stop mourning due dates. Instead, you will lift your voice with heaven's courage alive in your chest and declare, "Bill, you are already paid." I thank divine substance. Fulfill yourself in perfect ways. My supply meets you before the due date. I walk in lightness, in order, and in complete provision. Bills are not maledictions. They are training grounds for sovereignty. They are not snares. They are triggers that reveal truth. They do not prove failure. They call forth faith. Every invoice is a stage upon which your word performs. Every debt is a doorway through which dominion is practiced. Each financial picture is exactly that, a picture, a mirage testing whether you will narrate fear or proclaim abundance. I have personally watched people turn bills into blessings, not by panic, but by proclamation. They declared, "You are the expression of divine expansion. You are already satisfied. I bless you, I thank you, and I release you to be fulfilled by the invisible hands of God." Many scoffed, branding it delusion. Find a better job, craft a new strategy, keep a plan. B. Yet she held a wisdom many dismissed. No contingency plan ever exceeds the authority of the spoken word. A faithful mouth governs more than fearful shaking hands could gather across an entire lifetime. Month after month, while the bank's answer was no, her declaration remained yes. When the figures shouted empty, she affirmed fullness. When fear encircled her, she answered not with tears, but with truth. And provision did not dry up, not because she mastered the mechanics of a system, but because she recognized the source and kept her speech in alignment with heaven, regardless of earthly circumstances. Grasp this clearly. Money is not moved by anxiety, but by articulated word. It does not bow to panic, only to power. When you face an invoice and narrate impossibility, heaviness, unfairness, or fear, you retune yourself to scarcity's signal and magnetize further demands. Creation does not audit your emotions. It amplifies your pronouncements. If you label yourself broke brand, the invoice a burden, or insist it can't be done, the law complies with your confession, and scarcity appears with strict fidelity to your voice. Yet if you rise renewed and move through your home, refusing to murmur at stress, instead confronting the matter directly, placing your hands upon each invoice and declaring, "Thank you, God. You are paid before due, covered without effort. I am not under your dominion, I am above. I do not serve you, you serve me. My word generates your solution." Then movement begins, ministering forces advance, channels, open phones, ring clients, return debts are canceled, and withheld refunds are released, all because you elected to command instead of complain, to legislate rather than lament. This is the discipline. This is the governing law. This is the path. Refrain from speaking about the bill, speak directly to it. Issue decrees over it. Regard it with empowered love. Bless it in unwavering faith. Conduct yourself as someone who is never startled by provision, because you know it to be constant, exact, and faithful. Therefore, institute today a dominion protocol, uncomplicated, repeatable, and inviolate. I name it the triple order identity, word, and circulation. Identity functions as the throne. Word serves as the scepter. Circulation operates as the river. First, enthrone yourself in truth. I am the wealth of God in expression. Second, speak according to law. You do not petition, you decree. Third, set substance in motion. Give, bless, forgive, and receive. For whatever refuses to circulate inevitably stagnates. Observe how this dissolves unseen blockages. Joyful giving cancels vows of fear. Forgiveness dissolves contracts with debt. Blessing consecrates channels. Guilt-free receiving announces your standing as heir. Circulation is not impulsive spending. It is the sacred liturgy of supply. What leaves your hands in obedience and love returns to you multiplied by that very law. Some will ask, what if I give and my resources appear to shrink? I reply with heaven's principle, nothing given in faith diminishes. It merely changes form so that your dominion may expand. The seed is never the forfeiture of a harvest. It is the origin of it. Circulation responds to your speech. Declare there isn't enough, and you freeze the river. Declare there is more than enough, and the riverbed broadens. Consequently, consecrate every outflow with a decree. I release these sums under grace, and they return to me multiplied in perfect ways. Practice this not as barter or bargain, but as alignment with divine order. The one who circulates in love disarms scarcity's guardians and moves freely among open treasuries. Recall the law of the inner door outside gate swing only after the interior latch is turned, and that latch is your spoken word. Seeking more clients. Address them in honor and legality. I bless you where you are. You find me by simplicity and truth. Desiring new opportunities, unlock them verbally. The right opportunities recognize me. I recognize them. Hoping for a raise. Elevate your decree. My value is seen and rewarded because divine justice arranges the scene. Nothing begins from the outside. The outer world simply reflects the contract you have ratified within. Consider as well the law of consecrated silence. This is not silence born of fear. It is the wise concealment of certain decrees until their roots run deep. A fragile seed is not exposed to the harsh wind of ridicule. As Florence Scovel Shinn cautioned, do not dig up the garden. So declare and bless, then hold the word in your heart. Conduct yourself as one already convinced and reveal it later as testimony and guidance, never as a plea for approval. Faith does not market itself. It manifests fruit. Adopt this treasured discipline. Keep a dedicated book of decrees. In that consecrated notebook, write each day a set of law statements in the present tense grounded in I am identity. For instance, I am the visible increase of invisible wealth. I am paid in advance by divine favor. My home is an open vault of peace and provision. Every invoice in my life is an expression of expansion and is fulfilled without effort. Read them aloud with unhurried cadence, sensing the gravity of authority rather than chasing emotional froth. Each week, review the pages, strike through fulfilled decrees with gratitude, and seal pending ones with praise. This book becomes the court ledger, the archive where rulings are entered and then carried out. Should you hear legacy phrases escaping your lips? I'm broke. It's hard. Money disappears. Clients vanished halt at once and audibly amend the record. I cancel that sentence. The truth is, I am prosperous now. Ideal clients find me now. My money grows and remains, for I circulate and steward with wisdom. Mid-course correction is like trimming a ship's heading. A single degree shifted now avoids disaster later. Remember, your mouth is the rudder at the helm. And what about other people, the outside voices? Do not surrender authority over your decree to them. Compassion invites listening. Wisdom applies filtration, and law anchors your stance. Treat the fearful kindly, yet refuse to borrow their vocabulary. If they claim the country is doing badly, reply, my kingdom is not of this world, and in it there is increase. If they insist no one is buying, respond, I walk in favorable exceptions. My channels are particular. When ridicule comes, bless them, may your portion expand. Then continue forward. Results your fruit will quiet their mockery. Here is another witness. A man harbored a long-standing grievance against a former partner. Bitterness acted like a clamp, choking his supply lines. Though he decreed wealth, his heart kept chanting an internal ledger of wrongs. I taught him the law of remission. I release and let God act. For 40 days he affirmed, I release everyone from my past. No one owes me anything. I owe nothing to anyone because my source is divine. On day 38, an unforeseen partnership proposal arrived on generous terms, an opening absent for years. When the resentment dissolved, the channel flowed. Forgiveness is not gullibility. It is withdrawing your grip from the shadows so the law can take your hand. Regarding planning, by all means plan, but never substitute the plan for the law. The plan is your map. The law is your compass. Maps may alter. The compass keeps true north. Carry out what lies before you with order, simplicity, and concentration, while reaffirming each day I am guided with precision. I take the right steps at the right time. Do not cram your calendar to validate your value. Miracles are not activated by perspiration, but summoned by the word, then made tangible through obedient steps. If you lead a company, institute a daily minute of law with your team. Open each workday with a concise, plain decree, no jargon, no awkwardness, honoring all beliefs while remaining spiritually resolute. We serve with excellence and supply locates us. Every client is welcome. Every solution appears at the perfect time. The strongest culture is not office politics, but the vocabulary repeated unconsciously. Shift the language and you shift the atmosphere. Shift the atmosphere and outcomes follow suit. When unexpected events appear, surprise costs, missteps, or delays, treat them as summonses to issue command. Trade complaint for blessing and instruction. Thank you, God, for this opportunity to exercise law. I cover it with perfect provision and swift solution. I learn with lightness. I advance with grace. In doing so, the unforeseen forfeits any authority over your emotions or money. It becomes a stepping stone rather than a barricade. Now we reach the law of testimony. What I recount, I summon. Choose to become the storyteller of miracles instead of the correspondent of fear. Let your official narrative, the version you repeat, magnify supply. Share your provisions, both small and grand, truthfully and humbly, without embellishment or ego. Every retelling engraves neural and spiritual pathways that make the next wonder easier to arrive. Gratitude spoken aloud acts like a gear that accelerates motion. Thank you. Life is not motivational filler. It is a seal that authorizes continuity. Here is a rhythm of ready-made decrees for recurring moments in life. Prior to a challenging negotiation, declare divine justice governs this agreement. What belongs to me by divine right comes to me with ease. What does not dissolves without loss. I win cleanly, the other side wins, and all prosper. Before pursuing a desired job, affirm, if this is my channel, it opens now. If not, the better presents itself without delay. I refuse to compete for crumbs. I circulate at the banquet of the I am. Facing fees and taxes, speak. I bless this system with order and clarity. I pay under grace with ease, and everything returns multiplied as improvements and invisible opportunities. Nothing is taken from me. Everything is multiplied to me. Ahead of an investment state, I do not act from greed nor from fear. I act from wisdom. The Spirit shows me the yes and the no. The right channel is confirmed by peace, and I obey. Addressing old debts, decree, you do not define me. I dissolve you. You are liquidated under grace by ordered and just means. I walk lightly and settle the past with praise. Do not overlook the law of place spaces, answer to speech. Address your home directly. You are a storehouse of peace and wealth. Every room overflows with order, beauty, and abundance. Speak to your workplace as to a willing partner. You are a center of solutions and perfect contracts. Speak to your body with honor. You are an instrument of prosperity. You have strength, clarity, and energy. All creation is attuned to the resonance of your identity. Every environment stands ready to respond to your directives. If you hear yourself saying, "When I am a multimillionaire, then," revise it immediately to, "As a multimillionaire by my divine right, I act thus now." The I am never delays, it incarnates. Therefore, assume the disciplines of one who already is practiced: generosity, uncluttered order, refined simplicity. without show, unbroken gratitude, diligent study of law, purposeful, quiet, and exact speech. Do not purchase to prove worth, purchase to express essence. Do not parade, circulate. Do not stockpile, multiply. Those wealthy by law do not shout to be noticed. Their melody is orderly stewardship, service, and unforced joy. Regarding relationships and prosperity as you rise, envy and subtle critiques may surface. Do not legitimize yourself by statistics. Stand firm with gentle strength. Lift people, teach when welcomed, bless without ceasing. Law's purpose is not merely your increase, but your usefulness as a conduit of building and relief. Wealth is safest when it functions as a bridge, not a barricade. When your elevation becomes passageway for others, life assigns you greater stewardship. Choose to be a spring that flows, not a dam that hoards. When people inquire, "What's the secret?" reply plainly, "My word became law within me." Resist jargon. Share the practice, identity, decree circulation. If they desire depth, point them to the 90-day discipline. Do not argue for proof. Demonstrate it. The most convincing evidence is the settled peace of a person living continually supplied. At last, let us formalize a covenant of the mouth. Speak it aloud, exactly for legal force rests in precision. I consecrate my tongue to eternal truth. I do not speak as a servant, I speak as an heir. I cancel every word of lack released by me through ignorance or habit. Henceforth my mouth builds, blesses, and commands. I am a multimillionaire by divine law. I circulate wealth with love. I live in the flow of unfailing supply. I speak, and it is fulfilled under grace and in perfect ways. In affirming this covenant, you bind your speech to dominion and fix your identity in lawful abundance. As we conclude, take hold of this image. The vault you seek is not distant. It resides within. Each uttered I am advances the tumbler. Every I am prosperous now turns the gear work. Each under grace and in perfect ways oils the hinges. A threshold arrives, and it may be this instant when the vault springs open, not due to any change in heaven, but because your voice has become indistinguishable from heaven's tone. This is the irreversible crossing. You will not revert to the dialect of lack once you've recognized the sound of your kingship. When a sovereign knows his language, no winter forbids harvest, no crisis corks the flow, no report rescinds the decree. Therefore rise. Let today be an audit conducted by your tongue. Identify your channels, bless your statements, swing open your gates, circulate your assets, and seal your identity. Begin with the first sound and conclude with the last sound. Govern the atmosphere of house and workplace. Refuse to bargain with fear. Refuse to delegate your voice. Refuse to vacate your seat on the throne. The world may label it audacity. Heaven names it obedience, and substance consistent as ever aligns itself with what is lawfully decreed. Now sign this with your life by speaking it verbatim as your seal. I am the abundance of God in visible form. I speak and wealth obeys me. I circulate and the flow increases. I give thanks and heaven opens. Everything comes to me under grace and in perfect ways. And so it is, so it remains, so it overflows. In voicing this signature, you finalize the decree and walk forth under its authority.